we actually got this comparison from you. We stole it from you, so I'm going to make that known. But the comparison to Nate Matlack, testing-wise, makes a lot of sense. But I wanted to hear from you because one of the things I'll never forget that you told me about Nate Matlack was how hard it was for you guys to mentally break him. Charlie's a little bit more cerebral. Seems like maybe once he gets past that and kind of relaxes and lets everything come to him, right, and the physical mask comes on, he seems like a guy that could have a trajectory very, very similar to Nate Matlack's.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Hello, and welcome to the Verbal Commitment Podcast on the Kansas City Sports Network, brought to you by Home Field Apparel. I'm Kevin Flaherty, and I'm here, as always, with my good friend Ryan Wallace from GoPowerCat.com and 24/7 Sports to talk about the world of local recruiting, from Kansas and Kansas City prospects to the college classes at Kansas, Kansas State, and Missouri. Later in the show, we'll talk to top Kansas City area trainer Joseph Potts with TopSpeed Training, who works with a number of top local players. As always, if you like what you're hearing, subscribe, hit that like button, or leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple or Spotify. And how would you like to make an extra $500? Go to BlueWirePods.com/survey and complete the Blue Wire audience survey about you and your podcast listening habits for a chance to win a $500 gift card. The survey will help us create a better advertising experience for our audiences, and in turn, it can help us here on this show. That's BlueWirePods.com/survey, which should be linked in our notes below this show, where all you have to do, answer some simple questions for a chance to win $500. And Ryan, you and I are already winners because the college football season has started. High school season is starting this week. Football, my friend, it's upon us.
I'll still take the $500 though.
Oh yeah. That's a heck of an offer. How's everything going?
No, I mean we're in it now. This is the moment we've been waiting for. It's finally here, and to be able to know that in 48 hours we're going to be at a high school football game has me jacked.
Yeah, for sure. Things are slow right now at both Kansas and Missouri. Missouri still in the recruitment for Andrew Babalola, 5-star guy out of Blue Valley Northwest here in the Kansas City area. That recruitment, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, but it hasn't played out just yet. So we're kind of in a wait and see. Maybe the biggest piece of local recruiting news for this week, Kansas State commitment RJ Collins from Staley High School confirmed that he's going to take a visit to USC. And Ryan, we're going to get a chance to see Collins when we make it out to this week's game, Oak Park at Staley on Friday.
Yes, our initial KCSN verbal commitment prospect pit stop number 1 will be Staley High School. As you mentioned, they're taking on really talented Oak Park team. Drew Clemens, a guy that we really like at tight end. This will be our first chance to see him in action going against RJ. And we actually picked this one before the USC offer and this news broke. So convenient for us that, we'll be out at Staley. I'm interested to talk to RJ once again. We talked to him at length at the Mill Valley 7-on-7 team camp, and a great kid and also a very thorough kid who wants to go through this process and be sure he's done his proper research on, the best opportunity for him. Commitment at K-State is still solid. This is more about just giving himself the peace of mind to see what USC has to say, see what they have to offer once he's out there. And we'll chat with him a little bit on Friday night because, again, I know that's the hot topic in Manhattan right now in terms of the 2025 classes. Will K-State and can K-State keep RJ Collins away from Lincoln Riley?
Last show we talked about the top players in Kansas for the 2026 class, and we interviewed the number 1 player in the state as part of that, Great Bend's Ian Premer. And now we'd like to take you across State Line Road. Of course, Kansas City not separated by much from the Kansas and Missouri sides. And we want to talk about the top Missouri players in the state for 2026. And Ryan, number 1, a guy that both of us just really love to watch, and a guy that you were on really early on, Ray-Pac running back Zephan Walker.
Yeah, he goes by Z. And again, junior prospects here. So 2026, heading into their junior seasons. I got a chance to see Z as a freshman at Ray-Pac. They were playing Lee Summit North. I went out to watch Jaden Doss, Jaden Riddell, and there's a freshman running back that is also returning kicks, who is far and away the fastest player on either team. That strikes you when you know the type of level of talent that Coach Mosey and Lee Summit North had there 2 years ago and have kind of had under his reign, no longer at Lee Summit North, now at Nebraska. But still, that was when I got on Z. And ever since then, you kind of keep tabs on him. And boy, Kevin, he continues to mature physically. Saw him at the Mill Valley 7-on-7 team camp. Speed has never been in doubt, but I think what he's starting to do with his mass, with the muscle mass, in terms of being able to bounce off contact, absorb contact, and kind of deliver some physicality is what's really caught my eye. You watch the highlights and you see what he can do with the smallest of creases and his burst, the acceleration, and how he can just run away from guys. To me, Kevin, the more I think about it, we might be looking at the most college-ready running back to come out of Kansas City since maybe Tony Temple. There have been some other good high school running backs. Dalvin Warmack comes to mind. But in terms of college-ready, the offers are there for Z for a reason. I think he is the real deal.
You know, when you see players, a lot of times they remind you of guys that you've seen in the past. If you remember, you know, Ronald Jones, who played at McKinney North and Dallas area and went to USC, and then almost ran with 1,000 yards for Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Watching him play, he had kind of this gliding running style that reminded me a lot of Jamal Charles, even though he wasn't quite as fast. Really, who's as fast as Jamal Charles? But all of that's a really long way to say that Walker actually reminds me a lot of a former five-star player in Alex Collins, who played at Arkansas and then spent time with the Seahawks and Ravens. They've got similar frames at the same stage, similar little, you know, more physical than you would think.
Yep.
And while both of them had pretty good speed at this point in their development, neither one's a glider at all. They put it up and down like they are angry and trying to tear a hole in the ground with each step. And so that's kind of a guy that he reminds me of a little bit. When you move on to number 2, we have Edge Ronell Johnson from Blue Springs, who already has offers from Kansas State, and Iowa State heading into his junior season. Ryan, what do you think of Johnson at this point?
Early standout at a really, really deep number 1 camp that K-State had over the summer. Their elite camp shows up. He's got the all-tinted black visor at 6'4", almost 250 pounds, and then goes out and looks the part, right, in terms of his drill work and his one-on-ones. Blue Springs isn't a program, that is going to probably get a ton of wins, at least not this year. They're not expected to. But I highly encourage folks to get out and watch Blue Springs just to see Ronell, because I think he's the total package in terms of his physicality and his agility. I think if Kevin, can add an element of burst and a little bit more get off, I think he's got the possibility to be a really dominant edge player. If not, I think he still can carry a role at the Power 4 level simply with his physicality and with his strength.
Yeah, and he's got a frame that could allow him to get bigger, too. You lock him into a weight room for a couple of years, give him, the training table advantages that today's players have. And when you're looking at players who are about to head into their junior season, obviously you watch the tape a little bit differently than somebody who's got an extra year and is a little bit more of a finished product. I think in Johnson, his tape looks good, but I think what you really see is that really nice starter kit that you're looking for in terms of frame, length, like you said, the agility and movement. You just want to see a little more explosion, but the frame could project to multiple defensive line spots. And so I think he's got a really nice ceiling ahead of him. At number 3, we have Rocco Marriott, quarterback over at Platte County. Ryan, we had local quarterback trainer Justin Hoover on the show who works with Marriott, and he said Rocco will have to change his cell phone number once his junior tape starts making the rounds. Yeah,
I mean, I think nobody's here to question Coach Hoover, and I'm not going to get it either, because Rocco's proven it. And what you love about his tape is obviously the polish as a passer, which almost anybody that works with Coach Hoove, as long as he has, will get. But you love the touch. I love the footwork. But I think the reason why we're higher on him than maybe some other kind of industry scouts and evaluators is the athletic numbers that he puts up. And you're not going to see it on maybe all of these highlights, but the deeper you dive into his huddle tape, you're going to see the footwork and how he can be mobile out of the pocket, run away from guys. He was at the Elite 11 camp, I believe it was in Mississippi, and Deuce Knight, who's the Notre Dame commitment, was the only guy that had an overall spark score higher than Rocco's. So he's thought of as a really crisp passer, very accurate. But I tell you what, when he wants to get out of the pocket and hustle, the 4.5 speed is legitimate. And I think that's an area that folks are sleeping on, Kevin, is they don't know what kind of an athlete he really can be in the pocket.
100% agree. And you love quarterbacks now that come in with a baseball background as well. You know, that comes into play with all the RPOs and things that people want to run. Marriott's Platte County teammate, tight end Jack Oots, comes in at number 4. He's got all kinds of offers already, Ryan, including from the local schools, also stretching into SEC and Big Ten country as well. What do you like about Oots?
Well, I mean, he's got a little bit more of the recruiting hide because he's 6'5", 225 pounds. Tight end is that position right now that's so hot kind of in football. You know, everybody's looking for that next Travis Kelce. I don't know if that really is Jack Oots. He's a pretty good athlete, but he's not maybe elite in terms of the speed and the agility and things like that. But what I like about Jack is the physicality that he plays with. You know, he'll go up and catch the football, and then as you can see from the highlights, he's going to go and get a couple extra few there for you. And what I also really like is what you see from his dad when he does put him kind of in line and what he's able to do at the line of scrimmage and run support. This might be a little bit of an unpopular opinion. Again, a guy that's only 225 pounds, but I think having seen him in person in Manhattan, you know, he's a guy that reminds me, Kevin, of Mason Richmond out at Blue Valley High School that is now an offensive tackle at Iowa, starting offensive tackle. Jack has the footwork, right, and the mobility where that might provide him an even longer future as a college and maybe future NFL pro than maybe even tight end would. And again, I know that's probably an unpopular opinion, but I think if things don't work out as a tight end, I love the makeup for him to potentially slide inside.
Yeah, he's already bigger than you see a lot of tight ends at his age. You know, a lot of guys are maybe his size when they're heading into their senior year or heading in to college. And so there's more room for growth there. I 100% agree with you there. I think the physicality that you mentioned, you can see it. He's got a willingness for it. He's got fun tape. I mean, both from the physicality standpoint and he has an ability to make guys miss. And those people who didn't see Mason Richmond at the same size or at the same stage are probably like, what? But Mason Richmond was out there playing 7-on-7, you know, mossing kids and was a really good athlete before he made that move to offensive tackle. And so that's important to note as well. And rounding out the top 5 is Marcel Reed, a defensive tackle over at Lee Summit North. Ryan, Reed isn't the tallest guy yet at 6'1". He is just heading into his junior year, so of course he's still got some time to grow. But the main reason you look at a guy's height is the length that comes with it and their ability to add weight. I'm not sure Reed needs to add weight. He's already, you know, really, you know, kind of stocky, but he also has that 6'7" wingspan that makes kind of that height or that length, you know, it's not an issue for him at all.
No. And I mean, he's not the nose guard that everybody's talking about at Lee Summit North because he hasn't been at Lee Summit North. Nobody's seen him yet. Transfer from Hazelwood Central out in St. Louis. As you mentioned, I think without a doubt, you want to see him maybe trim down a little bit and continue to work on the mobility, the flexibility, but the hand-to-hand combat, the strength that he plays with in the trenches, in tight spaces, he overworks and just overpowers people constantly. And again, I think the lateral quickness is there. You just want to see him maybe get a little bit better get off. But had a chance to see him at the 6-star finals out at Rapeck over the summer. And this is a very violent player, aggressive player, and a guy that, again, when he gets his hands up in on you where they need to be, offensive linemen really struggle, especially, at the high school level, some smaller offensive linemen, right? Guys that are only 6 feet, 6'1". With him at 315 pounds and the length that you talked about, he's a lot of trouble, and he's going to be a load here as he continues to develop that body moving into through his junior year and into his senior year.
And I'm glad we included one of my favorite clips of his where he just, locked out the arms and put the center, right on his derriere. There wasn't really a chance for that guy to win that rep. And I think that's where you see the length come in. Like you said, guys don't get into his body super well because the hand-to-hand combat is there.
So good.
Once he's able to lock guys out, it's play over at that point. I'm really looking forward to our conversation with TopSpeed owner and trainer Joseph Potts here in a minute. But first, we want to have a conversation with you all. One of the best things about recruiting in high school football is the discussion and community that it brings. And if you have any questions and comments, if you think our rankings are off, or if you just want college football 25 advice from our producer and friend Nick Springer, text us at the KCSN Mint Mobile hotline. We'll read your comments. We may just talk about them on the show. So what do you have to lose? Shoot us a message over at 913-407-6524, and let's talk about it. We also want to tell you about our friends over at Home Field Apparel. Time is running out on Can't Miss Kickoff 2024, a month-long event that can get you outfitted with gear for your favorite school. Try out the football box where you can get some never-before-seen items exclusive to your school, from short-sleeve shirts for the start of the season to long-sleeve shirts and hoodies for when the weather gets so cold in November. Remember, each of those items are only available through the box, so you don't want to miss out. Head over to homefieldapparel.com, use the promo code linked down below in the description, and you can get 15% off your first order. We'll be right back.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
With big cell phone providers, what you see is never what you get. Somewhere between the store and your first month's bill, the price you thought you were going to pay magically skyrockets. But with Mint Mobile, you'll never have to worry about gotchas ever again. When Mint Mobile says $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan, they mean it. So you can say bye-bye to overpriced wireless plans, jaw-dropping monthly bills, and unexpected overages. Mint Mobile is here to rescue you with premium wireless plans starting at just $15 a month. And better yet, all plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. And if you're worried about keeping your own phone and your phone number, with Mint Mobile, you can keep your phone and your phone number and all of your existing contacts. So ditch overpriced wireless to the Mint Mobile's deal and get 3 months of premium wireless service for just $15 a month. To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/KCSNVC. That's mintmobile.com/KCSNVC. Cut your wireless bill to just $15 a month at mintmobile.com/KCSNVC. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
We're back with the Verbal Commitment podcast sponsored by Home Field Apparel. And we're joined now by Joseph Potts with TopSpeed Training, which works with a number of the top athletes in the area, from high schoolers to college athletes and even pros across multiple sports. Coach, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah. So for those people out there who are unfamiliar, can you just kind of describe TopSpeed and how you work with players? Because there's a strength component, there's a speed component, there's even a psychological component, right, to the way that you work with athletes.
We are purposely very challenging because it's not going to get any easier whenever you get to the collegiate professional level. We push them. We're fortunate in that a lot of the high schools now take care of they check the strength box in their weight rooms. So that frees us up to focus more on the speed and power elements. And that's overwhelmingly what a lot of the athletes lack So we're able to work synergistically with the high schools and create more explosive athletes.
And in addition to working with high school athletes, right now you're working with the Kansas City Current. So what's that experience been like for you?
So that's kind of a funny story. I got brought in to consult last season. They had an overwhelming amount of injuries. So they brought me in, and I made some recommendations, and they won back-to-back games. So I got a call from the GM, and she's like, "Hey, would you be interested in taking our role as interim director of performance?" And I was like, "No, I can't." Now I've got a full-time business I'm running in TopSpeed. I'm raising, at the time he was 3 going on 4. I'm raising my son. I've got a lot on my plate, and they were very accommodating. And she was like, "We've got some staff in place. Basically, if you could just kind of outline what they need to do, they'll be the boots on the ground, and you can just kind of design what we need to hit." And anyway, that went well. I think, if I recall correctly, they told me the numbers not too long ago. We ended up with, we had, after that point, they won a pretty good amount of games. Actually, one of our analysts from last season told me that I think it was like a 70%. Up to that point, they had won or tied only 38%. And after that point, it became like 75%. So it was a pretty good swing. We didn't have many injuries to close out the season. Scoring was up about a goal per game. We had 13 new speed PRs set from that point on, and 11 new vertical jump PRs set after that point.
That's amazing. One of the things we talk most about this show, probably is the high school, recruiting aspect of it and everything. And one of the guys that we love most is Jaden Woods at Mill Valley, and
very understandable.
you see all the things there, but I think one of the traits we love most about him is the motor combined with the strength, and kind of how has that played out for you, training him as well as a guy that, he does give that level of effort. He doesn't understand, hey, somebody's blocking me, I can't make this sack, after the initial rush or whatever. How does that show up for you as a trainer?
Well, in his attitude and effort. One, he's very consistent. In fact, I just spoke with his grandmother not too long ago. She's trying to set him up with an in-season training program. And then, the intensity he brings to the workouts, like he truly, truly wants to get better. I've been doing this long enough that you can tell the kids who just are here because their parents signed them up, and they come in, the effort's not really there. And 9 times out of 10, the play on the field is underwhelming as well. So Jaden is the opposite of that. He's a kid, I'll be honest with you, with the stuff he's doing now, I've never seen it before. Kids that size, being that explosive, him and Charlie Wolben are athletic freaks now.
We're going to get to Charlie in just a minute, but obviously everybody in the country was after Jay. It was obvious, and he wound up committing to Penn State. One of our favorite sleepers in this class is another one of your clients and his Mill Valley teammate, Connor Bohan. We saw him. He looks like $1 million. He's a great athlete. From your standpoint, why should more schools take a longer look at Connor?
Connor's one of those guys that, like you mentioned, the athleticism is going to make – he's a Swiss Army knife. He's basically premium level clay that you could mold to whatever you needed for your team. I mean, that's a kid, Coach Appleby, during their combine, they clocked him in the 4.5 range. He's got a 40-plus inch vertical jump, a 10-foot-plus broad jump. He's a weapon with his feet, with his arm, and if you needed, you could throw him out at receiver with that combination of athleticism.
Coach, when I come in, and it's usually at least once a year, maybe several times a year, but there's typically a who's who down at Top Speed. If you come in the off season, you might run into a Dalton Reisner. I've been in and seen Elijah Lee when he was with the Chiefs. But I can also remember Blue Valley Tigers, right? And you've got two that I can think of that are on the 2 deep for this upcoming week 1 game. Sterling Lockett worked out with Cash Sindish, and then Bo Palmer was another guy that's backing up the middle linebacker spot right now at K-State, and he was one of your clients. 3 guys that I know you're working with right now at Blue Valley are names that EKL offensive coordinators know pretty well, and a lot of recruiting guys know pretty well by now. Dawson Merritt, McGuire Richmond, and Lincoln Stuvey, who actually I believe just picked up an FBS offer here recently.
Yeah, Utah State.
Yeah, what stands out about those Tigers? Because from what we can tell, they're going to be a really strong unit this fall. And I don't just mean defensively, but also physically strong.
Yeah. Those are 3 well put together guys. Merritt, being a Bama commit, you're not going to go in there and not look the part. They would recruit you if you didn't. And he'll actually be our second athlete headed there after Jaden Roberts. But he's a guy overwhelmingly has become more athletic. I don't recall what his starting 40 was, but I know during a testing session recently with us and the staff there at Blue Valley, he clocked in the 4.6 range, 35-plus inch vertical jumper. Richmond's very similar. He clocked actually a step faster at 4.62. Another 35-plus jumper. And then Stuvey, as an edge guy, he's not quite there with the long speed, but he's got that initial burst that you want from those edge guys. He's another guy that I would consider him somewhat of a sleeper, even despite the offers. I think he's got probably what team are causing teams to overlook him is the height. If he's one of those guys that if he was another inch or 2 taller, he's probably looking at serious Power 5 offers. But as it stands with Utah State, Army, Air Force, Missouri State, like he's got a good stable of offers already. But yeah, I mean, those 3, it's funny, like, playing football at Blue Valley back in the 90s, I'm in a group chat with some of my former teammates, and they're like, man, these kids today are a whole different level than we saw on the field. They're really well put together.
Yeah, it's a funny story about Lincoln. Actually, Kevin and I were talking with John Holmes over at Bishop Miege, and this was over 2 years ago, and we just said, is there anybody on the horizon in the EKL that we should know about from a recruiting standpoint? And he was talking about Lincoln Stuvey, I think, coming off of his freshman. Maybe it was sophomore year, I can't remember. So he's been a name that I know a lot of coaches in the area are really high on, and maybe it's just taking a little bit longer for the college coaches. From one defensive end, though, to another, you already mentioned him, Charlie Wolleben. We actually got this comparison from you. We stole it from you, so I'm going to make that known. But the comparison to Nate Matlack, testing-wise, makes a lot of sense. But I wanted to hear from you because one of the things I'll never forget that you told me about Nate Matlack was how hard it was for you guys to mentally break him. Charlie's a little bit more cerebral. Seems like maybe once he gets past that and kind of relaxes and lets everything come to him, right, and the physical mask comes on, he seems like a guy that could have a trajectory very, very similar to Nate Matlack's.
Absolutely. And you nailed it. Once he's comfortable enough in the system to operate on an instinctual level and let that hindbrain dictate what happens, he's going to be an absolute animal. The athleticism he's got with the frame, like I said, much more athletic version of Nate. I think Nate played his senior year around 212 pounds, and Wobben's already 220 plus. Probably a bit longer wingspan as well. He's another 40-inch vertical jumper, which with that frame is literally, it's him and Woods are the two guys 220 plus. Well, I suppose Gavin Hoffman as well, and maybe Devin Neal. But that's rare company that I'm mentioning. And so, yeah, I think the sky's the limit for him once he learns to operate on that at that instinctual level.
Ryan brought up John Holmes, so I'm going to ask you about one of the players that he's got there at Miege. Marco Rodriguez, did some really nice things last year. We had Coach Hoover on the show, a few episodes ago, and he felt like Marco was really primed for a big year this year from a quarterbacking standpoint. Why might that be true also from an athletic standpoint, and maybe the way that he's continued to work on his body and his athleticism?
It's funny you mention it. He is one of the guys I consider a sleeper in the area. After going for 3,000 plus yards last season, he's a guy that I think, in fact, I talked with Coach Cash about this earlier. We both think if he comes out and in those first 3 or 4 games lights it up, you're going to see like dominoes fall.
Right. And
schools are going to kind of be tripping over themselves like, oh, okay, we need to evaluate this kid. We need to get him in and check him out. He's another kid, like athletic, almost like Stuvie. A lot of the athletic boxes are checked. There's just, unfortunately, for those Power 5 and those FBS level offers to come, you got to have all of them checked. And his frame still needs a bit of work. Schools are a bit hesitant. They're like, well, he's a project because we're going to have to add 15, 20 pounds to him. But he's worked his butt off this offseason to put on some mass, and he's become more explosive as well. I'm excited to see what he does.
I wanted to ask you about a 2026 player now that is starting to gain some buzz. I was impressed with what I saw from him at K-State's camp. He actually came twice this summer, and I'm starting to hear it now locally here from Olathe North as well. That's Kelvin Parker, kind of a defensive back, I guess a cornerback probably. Depending on how he grows, maybe it's a safety. He's not Jacob Parrish in terms of testing and speed, but another guy that, again, just seems like he's got really good mobility and flexibility and plays the ball extremely well. But I'm curious to know a little bit more about his testing background.
So he's a guy, unfortunately, with my responsibilities with the Current, like I'm not able to be here as much. So Coach Cash and he work very closely together. In fact, the skill work is a component that Coach Cash has worked really hard with him this offseason. He's another guy that I know he's running faster, he's jumping higher, but I'm really excited to see what he can do on the field.
Right.
Because then that will just kind of back up his tape, and schools will be more comfortable. I know he's talking with like you mentioned, K-State, and Iowa's asked about him recently as well.
When you look at that 2026 class, you have another interesting guy in St. Thomas Aquinas running back Cal Arndt. Smaller guy, but man, does he fill it up in the weight room for a guy who's, I think, you see that stuff online where people joke around about, your average man should be able to bench press his own body weight or whatever else. Cal is a guy that really throws up weight room numbers that are far beyond what his body weight would indicate.
Yeah, Cal is a weight room warrior. It's funny, you guys are good. You did your homework because Cal is a guy that I've got listed as a future high level prospect from the area. Now his height is probably going to work against him to some degree, but I think we saw last year like the ability, the on field ability, the testing metrics are there. Like he's In fact, he's a guy that I gave a GPS tracker to. So he'll be wearing that during games this year. So I can get some good insight to give to schools that reach out about him. But yeah, actually, so he was part of a research project we did this summer, and I wasn't around, so the interns were running it, and they sent me his metrics from that, and I had to do a double take because he was like a 10-foot broad jumper. I didn't let him use their arms, and he was hitting like 32, 33 plus in the vertical jump. Which if you add the arms to it, it's probably like 36. Really explosive kid. Unfortunately, he had that injury last season that cost him some time, but I'm really, really excited about him and the future. And you're right. Like, if anybody was worthy of the nickname Muscle Hamster, it's that kid. Actually, he reminds me a lot of what was their old running back, Tank Dell. Yeah. I was working at the Nike event that Tank came and tested at, and so I've got some context when I say that Cal is actually more explosive.
More explosive than Tank Young. That's wild.
That's saying something. I name dropped a couple Wildcats. You mentioned Devin Neal, and I know several Missouri Tigers that you've touched over the years before they've gotten on campus there. But I'm curious and maybe it's not someone from those three schools. Maybe it's somebody that went elsewhere. But do you kind of have I don't know if you want to call it an individual passion project that you're just really happy at the way that player took to your coaching, your training, and developed? I mean, is there kind of a story that you're most proud of in terms of from the day one when they walked in to where they ended up in college or even in the pros?
Well, I think both Devin and Jaden Roberts are going to get an opportunity at the professional level. Nate Matlack is a guy that blossomed. I tell the story. The first time I met Nate, he looked like a surfer. He walked in, he had long blonde hair. He's probably wearing flip-flops because he was originally a quarterback. And, talking to him a few years later, I was like, hey, how long did they have you at quarterback? He was like, like 6 snaps. And then they were like, yeah, why don't you try tight end or linebacker? Anyway, they started moving him around, but it worked out. I think he's got a bright future as well. It's tough to pinpoint like a singular kid. Nick Herzog's a guy that I think really blossomed in the program as well. I'm excited to see, he's still young. He's what, like a redshirt freshman
or sophomore? Yeah, at Northwestern.
There. Cooper Lovelace is a guy who's made spectacular gains. He's a guy that he's hypermobile, and those guys are very tough to. There's a yin and yang to mobility, and hypermobile athletes tend not to be able to. What's a good way to phrase it? It's tough for them to display the power they've got because the joint doesn't transfer it from the ground very well.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a guy that blossomed in the program as well. One of my, I can't call it a regret because I don't have any control over it, but you mentioned Coach Cash, and he's one of the guys that I will always feel would have, if he had gotten in the right system, he got a camp invite with the Browns out of Kansas. But I feel like if another team had taken a look at him, he's probably a guy that has a decent NFL career. So I love that guy to death. He's one, anytime anybody asks me about like guys that I've really loved to watch grow, it's him. Because now, he's a father. He works here with me. He's a guy that I can't speak highly enough about.
I have to give you a lot of credit for calling Gabe Peterson too. That was one that maybe
Oh yeah, I had forgotten about that. I was beating that drum for that kid.
You were on the table for that kid, and it was one that I'll admit, from my perspective, it wasn't immediately obvious.
It's that,
And you were beating the drum, and we were kind of like, well, maybe, and then he goes and winds up being a heck of a player at Utah State now. Was a big time playmaker at New Mexico State last year. You definitely called that one.
Yeah. I tell you, if you can find a kid that's 230 pounds plus that can jump 35, 36 plus, that's really rare. Like, even if you look at, and that's all I did. I just look at the historical context relative to the NFL Combine. And you go to bat for these kids, and you try and get coaches to realize, like, hey, this is a high quality athletic potential that you have access to here if you're just willing to take the time to evaluate. Gabe was a center in high school, so he didn't get to display what he was capable of. Then you get him on the defensive side, and like I said, that explosion comes into play, and you're able to see it, and it's like, okay, there it is.
I'm a Kansas guy, so I do have to ask a Kansas question. When Ryan and I saw Devin Neal in high school, we didn't just talk about how good he was. We also said, man, this guy's going to be an unbelievable ambassador for that program because of the personality and the leadership and all the attributes there. How obvious was it for you, as somebody who was training him, that saw the athleticism and all of the character things that you guys try to work through? How obvious and apparent was it for Devin Neal coming out of Lawrence High?
He's he's got a lot of charisma, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. He, we get kids in here that they're athletic and they're talented, and they might do some stuff off the field that concerns us. Devin is the complete opposite of that. That is a kid who literally, like, it's cliche to say it, but like, if you had a daughter, you want him to date your daughter. Like, he's super respectful. He's funny. Yeah, I like I mentioned, he's charismatic. He's everything you described. Like, he is a fantastic ambassador for the University of Kansas. And he's got that huge regional footprint. I'm excited to see what he does this season and then beyond.
No doubt. Yeah, Kevin and I talk about it a lot. Jalen Daniels is a guy that deserves the hype, right? But I think in many respects, Devin has earned more hype. And for one reason or another, just hasn't always done it.
To get all the glory. That's how it is,
I want to get you out of here with two questions. First, from kind of a local standpoint, because again, you mentioned earlier in the interview, you grew up in the area, and I get asked this question a lot, and I'm sure Kevin does as well, kind of covering the recruiting scene, is this trajectory of Kansas City, even Missouri as a whole, how recruiting has really taken off. It's not a flyover state anymore. And there seems to be a question of kind of the chicken or the egg, right? You'll have people that talk about 7-on-7 and the growth there that has helped maybe push some football prospects into being, better earlier. But then there seems to also be, and I think I'm more in this camp, the personal training side. What you guys have done, when did you feel like that really took off in terms of you could tell more and more kids are starting to come through your door because they're seeing the results of what's happening? And I guess the other part of that is just, are the kids that are walking through your door now on day one much better than the first time you open your doors to kids? And what do you think that comes from?
So I'm going to give you a multifaceted answer.
Please do, because I gave you a multifaceted, long-winded question.
So I don't know that 7-on-7, I can't say that 7-on-7's really done that much for development. What it and the internet has done is exposure. Kids travel. They're not just in the region anymore. They're going to the coast. So more schools are seeing them. The internet obviously has done that in a bigger way than 7-on-7 ever could. So that when talking about 7-on-7, that's my opinion there. I don't think it hurts the skilled kids to do it, unless I've seen some overuse injuries, but not a huge spike. Typically, the ones I see are the ones that are doubling up, trying to do track and baseball, or combined with 7-on-7. Now, as far as like then versus now, there were talented athletes. I mean, one of my first clients when we opened TopSpeed was Clay Rhodes, who I think was a four-star in a blue ball. Had offers from Mizzou. He told me Oregon. Ended up at Mizzou, but actually, I think if KU had come in with a bit more serious approach, unfortunately, he was only ever offered a walk-on position there, and they kind of scoffed and were like, "You're a local kid, you should want to play here." And he's like, "I literally have an SEC offer." I'm sorry, what's Oregon? The Pac-12. Yeah. He's like, and at the time, Mizzou was in the Big 12. He's like, I've got the ability to have my school paid for. Why would I want to go and pay to play? So what the difference is there's more of them, and that is multifaceted. Kids now they're exposed to more through social media, the internet. There's kind of this whack job trainer down in Texas that I started following because people kept sending me stuff. And like, what do you think of this? What do you think of this? And anyway, I look at his account and like, 60, 70 kids from this area follow it. So they see it and then, monkey see, monkey do. They want to replicate it. And then the high schools have done a good job. 2012, whenever we opened, there probably weren't many high school strength coaches, especially in this region. And now I know, and I say dedicated high school strength coaches in the term of like someone other than a position coach, just kind of being like, "Hey, you
handle the weight room." Yeah.
You go copy something from bodybuilding.com, blown up on the whiteboard. It's like Blue Valley's got a kid. They send me his stuff. It's pretty good. And we're also fortunate in that we've been around long enough. The coaches in the area respect us. Coach Appleby from Mill Valley refers kids in. Coach Holmes at Bishop Miege refers kids in. Coach Terrell at Blue Valley, the Blue Valley North staff, even the Blue Valley Northwest staff have all personally referred kids our way. And so there's less like inhibition from them. Now they don't feel like, oh, I'm going outside of my school. And because that was one thing, like we trained some St. James kids, and they're like, our coach used to hate us for coming here. And now he's another coach that refers kids to us. Mm-hmm. So there's less obstacles in their way getting access to it. Semino closed his place down, and now he's working directly at one of the high schools. But he's another guy, like I respect the heck out of what he does, his system. So they've got good people there, good boots on the ground there. And they're less inhibited to come to places like TopSpeed.
Let's get you out with this one. It goes back to something I asked Coach Hoover from a quarterback perspective, but I wanted your insight on it here. Things have changed. You mentioned it. It's not just about weightlifting anymore. I mean, McGuire Richmond was talking to Kevin and I about how he's implementing yoga into his daily, acumen. That was unseen, unheard of back when Kevin and I were in high school for athletics. But, you probably get a lot of kids obviously from a college recruiting standpoint, how fast you run, everybody wants to know their 40 times, and how naturally strong a kid is. Those are important. But is there an element of what you guys do, and maybe for dads out there listening, for interested athletes out there listening, maybe kind of an unsung training heroes, maybe it's in the agility world, that you would say it would be wise to focus on this and improve in this area, because time and time again, it's going to work out even if you're 40 or your bench press or your squat might be a hair under.
So I will be brutally honest with you. Strength has a very poor carryover to on-field performance. In fact, if you look at some of the NFL combine results, specifically the bench press, it's strength endurance, but obviously having that high level of absolute strength makes 225 feel lighter. You can do it more, but it's populated. The top finishers there is populated with busts. And a lot of it tends to be for health reasons. They can't stay healthy. But my big pet peeve is people thinking that more weight is the answer. And fortunately, guys like Matt Rhee, who are now with the New Orleans Saints, but had been at Alabama, Indiana, and before then IMG, they're doing a good job educating the world on the benefits of speed training. And I don't just mean out there on the track, focusing on speed mechanics and things like that, but the speed in which you move load. We've got, I'm looking at a half dozen barbell BBT trackers in here. That's the thing, is like, power is the ultimate divider. And power is speed and strength, the synergistic relationship between speed and strength. And speed will always trump the strength side. So, guys love to go in there and lift weights. It's great. You look good. You get a good pump. But unfortunately, oftentimes those weight room warrior types are the ones who aren't really, really explosive on the field. In fact, on our social media, I just recently published some research out there. So your fat, if you want me to get really into the science behind it,
let's do
your
it.
fastest fast twitch fibers are your type 2X. Even low volumes of heavy weight shut those down for about 30 hours. And that was in a trained population. With a high school population, it's probably closer to 48, 50 hours. In an untrained population, higher volumes of heavy lifting have been shown to shut off your type 2X fibers for up to 4 days. A lot of times I try and educate kids on, hey man, even if they're asking you to lift a day or two before the game, back off how much you're doing and focus on how fast you can get it moving. Because they're just the opposite of that. The research out there says if you train for speed and power a day or two before the game, 24 to 48 hours, you're actually more agile and you're faster. So that's the thing I try and educate parents and kids on.
Potts, Kevin and I, our type 2X fibers, if we lift a TV remote on a Saturday, are done for about 2 weeks. So
I probably pulled about 3 muscles just during this conversation. Coach, if there are any players, coaches, or parents listening to this and they're interested in learning more about TopSpeed, what's the best way for them to find out more or maybe get a hold of you?
So our website is www.topspeedtraining.com. All of our social media stuff is at TopSpeed LLC. My email is on the website. They can feel free to reach out. Happy to talk shop, answer questions. Time, unfortunately, is something I don't have a lot of, but I do what I can. If it takes me a few days to get to an email or something, don't hold it against me. Hey, real quick though, one guy I did want to mention that I feel like is a sleeper in the area that we didn't go over. Abe Schaefer, offensive lineman at Mill Valley. He's a kid.
Mickey's going to love this part.
Yeah.
Mick Schaefer is going to love this part. This is going to be his favorite part.
I had just jotted down some guys I felt like were kind of sleepers in the area. Abe is one, and then Logan Chandler at Blue Valley Northwest is another. And he's the other. He's a skill position guy with a 40-inch vertical. And then Lincoln's little brother, Taft Stubbe, is one to keep an eye on in the class of 2026. So I wanted to give those guys a mention because I feel like they're ones who we'll see being recruited in the future.
We love it. We love it. Well, that will wrap it up for us. Thanks for stopping by, Coach, and thanks so much to all of you for watching and listening to the Verbal Commitment Podcast on KCSN. If you like what you've seen or heard, leave us a like, subscribe, or hit us with a 5-star rating. And until next time, take care.